The artwork is a pigment work called Red Rain. Red rain or red water is a phenomenon that has fascinated me over a very, very long time. It's been reoccurring in many forms, shapes and places. It inspired me to start on this body of work. It started about 20 years ago when I read the biography of Chairman Mao, and there is a moment in his biography. He was traveling with his closest entourage and his personal physician, and suddenly the river turned red. In that moment, Chairman Mao said, "I want to go swimming, let's all go swimming." And he took off his clothes. His doctor tried to prevent him of jumping in the water, but he jumped in and he told everybody to follow. It was one area very close to a highly industrialized zone in China where the river turned blood red. And this is the very first time I was confronted with red water, besides some pictures I saw, and I saw some areas in the Gulf of Mexico where the water turned brownish red when I traveled in the 70s, and it was actually in the Mississippi Delta, all the way south, where the water turned almost red. And I started researching this, and more I found the reoccurring color red in nature. It's a color automatically stops us. The color red is associated with giving up the morning sun. When we use the color red, there are many shades of red that are extremely interesting to mix. And when I mean many red paintings, and the shades in reds are really extremely deep. They have a lot of depth, and there is also different kinds of red algae that we find in nature. It's a very interesting phenomenon, and one red algae we find in the Miami area. Basically, there is an alert to get out of the water when this red algae appears. So red water is, and the color red is a symbolic color that always triggers it's also a color of love. When we're recording this, it's the time of Valentine, it's the time of the heart, so it's not a negative color by no means, but it's a color of attention. And this is basically why my attention fell onto the color red, and I started researching it and started to create this body of work. I just saw a post of a river in the Ural, very up north, and it was a white landscape, and there was this red open river in the middle of the ice. And there's a very incredible aesthetic about this, but automatically again you think, what is this red doing in the middle of a white virgin landscape? The same phenomenon you find in the Amazon, in an area many years ago that was very frequent called Rio Grande do Sul. A lot of the Amazon was bright red. The artworks that I create are really, there is again the phrase I mentioned many times before, there's a great beauty, great aesthetical beauty in these signs, and they fascinate us, and the color red is really a color that is very, very interesting, has been used by many, many painters. I mean, foremost Goya, when he lost his eyesight, he went to the bullfights and you saw these red streaks all over the canvases, because when he was losing his eyesight, the red of the bullfight was extremely vibrant in his paintings. So it's a coloring art that is extremely interesting, and also the color red is highly reoccurring in the Vatican in many forms of the Catholic Church, and paintings that you find related to the Church that are extremely well known. I had the luxury to be able to visit certain laboratories and read about red rain and red water, and it's very, very interesting at what point the water is turning red, and we're talking of highly over-sonification, and there is a certain amount of sonification that exceeds the point the water starts shifting color, gets murky, this enormous amount of algae starts developing, and eventually the water turns bright red. And when it dries out, you find red marks in the sand or in the mud, and in combination of the sun, it's a very strong red pigmented earth that reminds with white edges a little bit like we see in this painting here. I think to be an artist, we have an incredible luxury of communication. You know, you cannot compare me to some artists that they use their art purely as a form of protest or a form of being loud about something happened. I think my work is really more a work of reflection, and I see that when people visit my exhibitions, most of the time it's silent, and I don't know why, and often the visitors, like at Art Basel, I see, or even in the Maxi in Rome or in Milan, I see the same people coming more than one time to look at an artwork, and maybe also because a lot of my work is extremely simple, and they just want to discover and in that try to understand this kind of process which really fascinated me when I started working on monochromes and how much difficulty it is to create a monochrome. And I just read a very long text of Soulages, the French painter that very well known, but it took him really many years to acclaim the deserved fame that he had on his black monochromes, because they are of a haunting beauty. You know, now we had the Rothko retrospective at the Louis Vuitton Foundation in Paris, and there is so much depth in these monochromes, or almost monochromes, that you really see where we all come from, where this abstraction is coming from, and the kind of depth these paintings can have, and the many layers that we have in this painting, that also that the color is so deep, is very interesting. The process itself is very interesting. You know, I like the books of the Museum of the Future. My dream would be to create an enormous body of red water with a space that could be nature or could be a structure built where some of the paintings could be exposed, also in the natural environment, because the museum, or the way of sharing art, I feel there is a lot of rethinking to do, you know. I visited many interesting artworks, public artworks in nature, or artworks combined with architectural elements that I like a lot. I like something we call Comte to integrate the artwork also into a space created in a location maybe far away, where people have to take a journey to study the artwork. And these sites are engaging us into almost a dialogue with nature. So this goes back to land art as well. This is far from land art, but I like the dialogue of, in Hiroshima there is a space of Walter de Maria. It's almost like a chapel, and there is just one more artwork exposed in that space facing the ocean. And I really like that dialogue, because you are connected with the elements and you look at the art in tranquility. Also, would this painting be in a place like this, you would have to enter the dialogue with space. Red water is often enormous. I cannot create a red water painting 100 meters long. But if I could place this in an environment of nature, automatically you would understand my connection to the red water. So there is, when you read these two books, the Museum of the Future and the Museum of the Future right now, you start understanding the curators and the artists at the museum entering that dialogue. And I think in Switzerland, the Baylor Foundation in Basel has done a remarkable job, and Olafur Olafsson had this very beautiful installation at the Fondation Weyler of green water, which was half inside and half outside, and it was a very wonderful way of understanding the artist to be standing in the lawn facing the museum and have the water inside and outside. And the way this show was curated is a great example of a dialogue between the artist, the public, and the triangle becomes a triangle together with the museum. So this is a big wish of mine to create more spaces like that.